Let's begin with Bob Blumenfeld. Number one question. What is the first piece of legislation you will introduce as a state representative? You have about 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much for the question. And thank you all for being here today. It means a lot that you've taken time out of your Sunday night to come be part of the process. And I'm proud to be here and able to participate as well. The question is, what would be the first piece of legislation that I would introduce? And in true political fashion, I'm going to say there's two things that I would introduce up front, but they're very similar in some ways, and they're a little bit ambitious too. But that's hopefully indicative of the kind of elected official that I plan to be. One would be a constitutional amendment to change the 2/3 requirement that we currently have for the budget process. The second would be to lower the threshold, also to change the 2/3 requirement that we have for local municipal bonds from 2/3 to 55%. Both of these, I think, are critically important. You know, for one thing, the budget process, as we saw last year, was just a fiasco, and the idea that the budget got held up by a small minority of Republicans and skewed the priorities that we hold dear is anathema. And I think that this is something that can be changed. It's ambitious. So they tried to do it a number of years ago, and they weren't able to do it because they put a lot of other adornments onto the bill. But I think with the right leadership and pushing it, it is possible. Now, in terms of the 2/3 requirement on municipal bonds, we have an incredibly large deficit right now, and one of the things we really need to do is stimulate our economy. And I think the best way to do that, and combined with the fact that we are about $100 billion to $500 billion in arrears on our local infrastructure. I see my 15 seconds. So the point of this is that by lowering the threshold, we can infuse into our economy a tremendous amount of money, create jobs, and raise the standard of living and the quality of life for all of us here in the San Fernando Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Moving on to Lorette. Same question, Lorette. What is the first piece of legislation you will introduce as a state representative?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you as well for being here tonight. It really is a lot of fun to be doing this, and I think we're going to have a very spirited time. So I appreciate you being here, and I know we're delighted to be here as well. The first thing I want to do is keep people in their homes. I mean, I think that once we get into the more legislative issues or the jurisdictional issues or reforming the actual way in which the state legislature will vote on issues, we have to really look at what the key problem is that we're facing in the San Fernando Valley and in the rest of the state. And quite frankly, people are losing their homes. So the very first thing we must do is keep them in their homes. I have proposed something to the Bank of America when I met with them in Sacramento. They are purchasing Countrywide, which is located in Calabasas. We have about 5,000 people that have been displaced because of Countrywide's bad debt, if you will. And in speaking to these folks, I've suggested to them that we have some sort of a debt mitigation program that we put in place. Let's keep people in their homes. Let's let them allow to continue to pay the initial rate that they were paying on their mortgages, not escalate the mortgage by 435% in some cases, but let them pay what they can afford and extend the debt ratio out beyond 30 years. But if these people make earnest efforts and are continuous, consistent payers, we will allow some of that debt to be forgiven off the back end of the mortgage. So we incentivize people to not just simply walk away from the American dream and to not foreclose on the dream that they have had and they've worked so hard for. So the very first thing I will do is to make sure that there is a roof over people's heads. And once we accomplish that, there will be a lot of other things we'll be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorette. Dan McCrory, what is the first piece of legislation you will introduce as a state representative?
Thank you, Ian. And again, thanks for being here, folks. My first piece of legislation would be single-payer health care. Single-payer health care is a cost-effective method for financing and administering a universal health care system. 4.5 million, up to 5 million people in this state have no health care, and we need to do something about that. With a single-payer system, California establishes a health insurance plan that covers everybody. This plan replaces all other health insurance plans, public and private. The health care tax replaces all the health insurance premiums you currently pay, all the deductibles, and most out-of-pocket health expenses, including most copays. The plan is administered by a single health agency with local branches, and it's financed by state health taxes and federal money that now goes to health care such as Medicare, Medi-Cal, and something called CHAMPUS. All the money earmarked for health care goes into a single state health trust fund. The 2005 Lewin Group report estimates that if California adopted a single-payer system with a little over 8% payroll tax on employers, on average, employers who pay coverage for their employees, at least 80% of their employees would save about $2,200 per worker, and families would save about $340. And everybody would be covered. The cost of administration drops from 25 to 35%, as it is today, to about 2 to 3%. If this makes sense, that's because it's been well thought out, and Sheila Kuehl has been very effective in carrying the ball in this one, but she's leaving soon because of term limits, so we need somebody to pick up the gauntlet and carry this forward and make sure that we have health care for everybody here in California. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Stuart Waldman, what is the first piece of legislation you will introduce as a state representative?
Well, I too would like to thank you all for being here. This is very exciting. I think it's exciting for all of us. We've waited a long time. There's 114 days left in this election, and I can't wait for it to be over. But the first piece of legislation that I would introduce is clean money. We need to fix this system. I know we all spend a lot of time raising money, and I'd rather be out talking to the voters. I've been fortunate since July. I've been walking precincts, and I've been able to have face-to-face contact with a lot of voters, and that's how campaigns should be. Now, Lonnie Hancock is not running for re-election because of term limits. She's the author of it now. If she ends up in the Senate, I'm sure she'll introduce it. So then I would introduce redistricting reform. We have a huge problem where the incumbents get to draw their own districts. They cut deals, they cut out cities. It's a huge problem, and it leaves us disaffected. So I would support and introduce those pieces of legislation. Thank you.